Dave, it's great to have you here as part of the Elite Minds video series. Really excited to be talking with you today. First question, straight out. What do you wish that your younger self had learned about mindset? You know, what would you tell your 15-year-old self now with what you know?
That's a great question. I think the biggest outcome, the biggest takeaway from the work with you is that my biggest flaws as a young person actually became my superpowers as a grown-up.
Wow. Okay, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I guess growing up, looking at like my time through school, it's a little bit different now, but a lot of notebooks, so you do your maths. Sit there and you do it quietly and you put your hand up and ask the teacher. Everybody would get through that pretty easily, but I'd battle. And I always thought, maybe that means I'm not as smart as other people, or I'm not picking this up as quick as other people. But really what it meant was I just think differently to other people. And school back then was really based around, you know, that type of learning from book, on the whiteboard, things like that. And that's just not the way I operate. So as I've gotten older, my ability to communicate with people, probably engage emotionally rather than at the intellectual level, has really helped me in what I do.
And so what do you think your younger self would have needed to know to have made things differently for you?
I don't want to blame the schools and an education system, but to not put everyone in a box and say, well, this is the way you have to do things, to, I guess, understand that everybody works differently and thinks differently, and just some acceptance of that to say, hey, if you're not picking it up this way, that's completely fine. There's another way we can look at it, or another way to go about it. So that would be probably the number one thing for me.
I really like that. So if we look at how we shape mindset, if you think about when you were 15, what meaning did you give that to yourself that you created moving forward in life? What meaning that you felt like you weren't good enough at school? What meaning did you give that moving forward?
That's a really tough one to answer, to go back that far. I think that I just accepted at a certain point that school wasn't going to be the place that I probably excelled. What I did do at school was I sought out relationships with people, which I look back on now and I think, well, what I really wanted to do was be friends with everyone. So I didn't enjoy bullying. If there was bullying going on, I'd always go to the person being bullied and I would try and make them feel better. And what I ended up realizing was I felt better when I made other people feel better. So looking back on it now, I can actually see that the way my brain works is really good, not at the scholastic level necessarily, but certainly in the real world, where I get the jollies from helping other people.
Yeah, and I think that's really been, you know, the profound realisation for you is that is one of your greatest superpowers, is that the way that you can communicate, develop relationships and make people feel good. And you're always coming from that place of helping. So in the sense of when we started working together, what were the greatest shifts around your mindset that you realised needed to happen? And, you know, we talked a little bit before in preparation for this of how much time you found that took as well.
Yeah, so I guess that from the start, when we started working together, some of the things that we were talking about were just so foreign to me because that's not ever been taught. So I recognised once I started to go through the process and the lessons with you and with Bob that I was thinking a certain way, and I was really stuck in this little box that really was my parents' beliefs, their political beliefs, their religious beliefs, just the way they make decisions, but then also the work life as well. I'd sort of spent most of my career in one business, and you start to think a certain way, and you end up on this train track where you sort of can't get off and think in different ways. So the biggest shift for me was to take myself outside the box and go, okay, what issue or problem or am I facing at the moment? And how can I think about it from several different angles, whether that's the person on the other side of it, within the business, or just a decision I had to make. I would recognise that this is the normal way I do it, and then force myself to think about it from as many different angles as I could. And one of the things that you always taught me was engage with something that you don't think you otherwise would have. So think about where you want to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. How can this decision help me get to that by taking myself away from it, not just saying, I couldn't do that, I can never make that happen, that's just not going to happen. And
which is how you were thinking.
Which is exactly how I was thinking. So whilst I was going well and I was fairly successful, I couldn't take it to the next level or recognise some of the other skills that I had because I just put myself in this box.
And that box, I think, started out when you were 15, the realisation that, hey, I'm not really good at school, so therefore I can't be really good at much else, so I'll just kind of stay where I am.
I think it actually started about grade 4.
Or great. Okay.
Yeah, that was what having thought about it, that's when it goes back to.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So moving from an employee to a business owner, what do you feel shifted for you in your mindset?
I always believed I was a leader, so I always thought that because I like to take people on the journey with me and help as many people as I could, I always felt like people would come to me for help rather than going to other people. So I knew I was a leader, but I always said to people, and I think it just, again, it became a thought pattern rather than something I actually believed. I said, I don't want to manage people. And I said that to you. I said, no, I don't want to manage people. Here's what I think I want. But the evolution from employee to business owner, I now really enjoy the managing people because I sit back and I think, well, if I can help these people think differently, come at it from a different angle, support them in what they want to do, I'm going to get the best out of them here as colleagues and team members, and also help them develop as people.
Yeah. So that self-image shift for you, what do you think were the key things?
I think the initial one was what I believed to be my flaw was actually my superpower, which was trying to build relationships with people, feeling good, helping other people, and then trying to do that as much as I could. The other one was probably around don't listen to my beliefs. So what I thought from growing up, whatever that was, I challenge them.
Yeah.
I actually just don't even think about them half the time now, and I just go, well, if that's the problem at hand, how do we go about it? Whereas before I probably would always just answer it the same way or defer it to someone else. But as a business owner, you can't do that. So where we're going as a business is the direct probably relation of where I was as a person and the way I think now.
I mean, for me, working with you for that period of time, I think one of the greatest things was watching the growth in confidence and the belief in yourself.
Yeah.
That to me was a profound shift.
Yeah.
But also the impact that fear had. Fear for you was such a big thing when we first started talking together, and it was really impacting your health.
It was.
And fear of being able to have conversations, or fear of being stuck where you were. How did that fear impact you, and what did you use? I suppose we talked about stick person as well. Do you want to give a bit of insight into that?
I'm pretty sure I 100% operated from fear, because as soon as I'd start to fear something, I would feel sick, and because I'm such an emotional person, that for me was really uncomfortable. So the initial shift was to just sort of go, okay, well, don't plan incessantly for things that might happen. So I might have a meeting coming up tomorrow, and for 2 days before it, I'd think about what possible question might someone ask me and what answers do I need to have. Not just one answer, but multiples, depending on how that meeting was going or what the question was. So what I ended up finding was I was mentally exhausted thinking about what might happen rather than actually being in the moment and just going with it. So what that's meant for me now is I can have a meeting tomorrow. I'll make sure I've got the right information for the meeting, and I won't think any more about it, because what ends up happening is you just get in the flow of it. And if you're always coming from a place where, how can I feel good, which for me is how do I make other people feel good, then I am completely fine.
You can't get it wrong.
You can't.
Yeah.
And I think it started with the stick person, which you sort of talked about from the start. And when you start talking like that, you think, well, I'm not sure that this is true. Can this be right? But once you start to engage with it and start to feel that feeling in your tummy, I just disengage with it and I don't think about it. And I'll force myself for a couple of minutes to think about something else that's positive. And whilst you never get rid of it, it's just retraining your brain to not get caught up in that negative cycle of feeling bad, and actually engaging with the positive thoughts that are going to come out of something.
Yeah. So again, it's that choice of thoughts that the stick person. So you started to make the choice rather than just being that automatic program for you.
It's a muscle. You work the muscle. But learning to not engage with the negative feeling has been the biggest change for me.
Absolutely. I would say it was profound because your health has completely transformed as well.
Yes, it has.
And from a sports person point of view, you're a hockey player, have been the whole way through and represented state, and now in the Masters. Talk to me about how you use visualization and what your goals were there for, I think it was last year's.
Yeah. So going all the way back again, probably to when I was 15 or 16, when I was probably taking it pretty seriously. Mental rehearsal played a big part of it. They did actually teach you that in certain areas, and it was trying to think about, but it was thinking about what might happen in a game. So if I was in a particular position, what would I do? So what I also found was that would trap me a little bit into thinking about a couple of particular circumstances, not actually being open to what might come. And as I was heading towards, the tournament last year, coming out of a pretty nasty injury, the thoughts could quite easily have been, oh, I'm not going to get right, will this hold me back? And instead of sort of engaging with what might happen, I just did my program, I kept positive, I stayed fit, and I went away with an open mind, not thinking about anything that might happen. So not necessarily visually rehearsing things that could be good, but I would just make sure I didn't disengage with a negative feeling. I'd be in the moment and I had a great time.
So you've actually reminded me, one of the key things that we talked about a lot was you were so good at using your imagination against yourself. So you would visualize all the things that would go wrong. And that was where so much energy for you was expended in the overthinking and analysing to now being able to stop yourself even going down that track because you recognise it. That's to right. Go, I can choose this instead, or it's almost like we don't go into it at all. We just pause, stop.
I realised that I would go home exhausted from thinking about the negative things that 90% of the time would never eventuate, and if they did, they wouldn't be anywhere near as severe as I planned for. So I wasted all this time and energy, valuable time and energy, on negative things that were never going to happen. And for me, that's been a huge takeout. I've got much more energy, and I just feel like I can tackle anything most days.
What habits have made the biggest difference for you?
Something that we've worked on from the start, being calm and relaxed and not being reactive to things. So I was a shocker for having to be in control of everything, because that made me feel happier, or at least it didn't let me engage with the negative feelings. So I'd check emails at night, I'd look at Teams messages, things like that, and immediately engage with that. And if something needed to be done because I was worried about it, I'd have to do the work there and then. So what I found was it was ruining my personal time, so the time I was supposed to be away from the business or spending time with my family. And I think that becomes unacceptable at a point. So just recognising the things I can control to make sure I keep myself, working with those beliefs.
And that calm and relaxed, I know, made such a massive difference for you.
Huge. I mean, when you're having negative thoughts and it impacts your health, the number one thing you can do for yourself is to make sure you control that, so that you're not actually putting yourself in those positions.
You've got 2 young children, Dave. What would you love them to know about mindset?
That's actually a really good question, Rach. At the moment, they're 11 and 8 years of age, so one of the things we try and focus on is they're getting report cards at school. We try not to look at the grade they got. We'll read the commentary around it. But more so trying to tell them that just because they're being graded on a system, that doesn't indicate who they are now, their abilities, or who they can be. We talk about who they are as people contributing to society and communities. And I talk to them a lot about building relationships. So going through stuff at the moment where obviously relationships change at the school environment, they can come home in a particular emotional state. Just talking about why people might be saying certain things, trying to help them disengage emotionally, but also helping them control how they feel and how they treat other people. And recognising that how they feel is how they can make other people feel, positive or negative. And we focus a lot of our time on that. So school for them is not about getting a certain grade or a particular score at this point in time. It's telling them that being a better person and understanding that making other people feel good is going to lead them to more success in the future.
Gosh, I love that. It's so good. Do you think that's what you would have been able to share with them had you not, learn about the stick person and learn about the mindset that you had?
No, I think I probably, unfortunately, would have come from the place of, well, if you want to be a doctor, then you need to try harder and do more work. So I think it's been a complete shift from me to talk about them as a person, who they are and how they can contribute to other people's lives, and not focus on any of the negative things that they might be perceiving or looking too far ahead.
I like that. And look, that for me is, I think, one of the key things for you, and I saw it from day one when I first started working with you, is you're an entrepreneur. and you had that mindset, but you just didn't know how to get there. So for me, in working, with younger people, all ages, it's about tapping into that potential. And so the mindset that you had wasn't allowing you to release that potential.
No.
And I think in exactly what you talk about from the parenting side and your kids, you're allowing the potential of your children to shine and come through with no expectations about how that should look like.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dave?
Probably just one thing from thinking back to my time at school was you'd often have people coming in sort of talking about you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. And I think saying the words is not enough for young people. For some it might work, but for most it doesn't. So the one thing I think young people can do these days is actually have someone give them the tools or a mechanism to strip away their fears or take away the negative thinking. Because once you've got the tools to do that, you don't need to look ahead thinking I can do anything. It just means whatever comes in front of you, you've got the tools to tackle it, get through it, and not use it as a roadblock. And I think you used that a lot when we were talking early on, particularly of if there's a roadblock in front of you, we're going to push right through it. We don't have to go over or around it. We can actually change our thinking, which allows us to go straight through it.
Yeah.
So for young people these days, my number one tip would be you can be anything you want to be, but more than that, make sure that you've got the tools to actually be able to do that. And I think a program that you run is certainly the way that that can happen.
So I think what you're tapping into there is having self-belief to back that up. Because if you don't, you're not going to believe that that's actually possible.
No, self-belief doesn't come because somebody tells you that you can do it, does it? History shows that doesn't work. Some people are naturally born with it, which is tremendous. And for everybody else, they can absolutely acquire that. That's just practice. It's putting in place those skills that you teach and just consistently, repeatedly going about it and recognising that you don't have to sit back and think, what if this happens? What if that happens? You're positively engaging with, well, I'm going to make this happen.
And I think interesting that you touched upon it as if it was somebody young, but we probably still had that same conversation when I said to you very early on, I think, Dave, you could run your own business. And you're like, no, not possibly. I couldn't do that. And then here we are. In that sense of that shift in self-belief, that shift in self-image, as you were able to use the stick person, control your thoughts and focus on what it is that you actually really wanted, rather than settling what you thought you were capable of doing.
Yes, we had that chat over and over. I'm pretty sure you got sick of saying it. So again, I think it is when you become ingrained in thinking a certain way, it just takes longer to overcome it, the longer you wait. So the younger you can start to train your brain to not think those ways,
and to wind the back.
That's exactly right. There's less to unwind, so that's the number one thing.
It's been great. Thank you so much for your time today. It's really insightful, and I know you're always coming from a place of helping people, and I know this conversation today is going to do just that. So thank you, Dave.
No, thanks, Rach.
Is there any